Money can't be the reason that someone chooses Florida State. Money cannot be the reason that someone doesn't choose a side. I like to dive into the character of the individual so much. What makes this person tick? Culture is, that foundation is set through the work. Do you play football because what you think football can do for you, or do you play it because you actually love it?
Recruiting loss that you still think about today?
Josh Allen, I loved him out of high school. One of the first schools to offer Justin Herbert, and then Oregon offered the next day. It's none of your business what people think about you. Be your own biggest critic, but stay grounded in what your beliefs are. It starts and stops with retention. We want to acquire the best. But if you go and sign the best out of high school and you only hold on to them for 6 months, that's not a great use of investment and or time. We just need to start from scratch and burn the whole calendar.
Talks of federal legislation. What do you think it actually looks like 36 months from October 27th, 2025? Welcome into the Next Up podcast presented by Teamworks. I'm your host, Adam Breneman. Today on the show, we have an awesome guest, one of the sharpest minds in college football, Florida State football general manager, Darrick Yray. We dive into how he builds an elite roster, evaluates talent, deals with NIL, paying players, all the things a general manager deals with in college football in 2025. And big shout out to our sponsor, Teamworks, the leading platform helping college programs dominate the new era of college sports. Here's Florida State general manager, Darrick Yray. Darrick, appreciate you joining me, man. Excited to talk to you. GM at Florida State, middle of the season, so I appreciate you taking time to chat.
Yeah, Adam, appreciate you taking the time and excited to be on and take part in this.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to start with, you've had a unique path, I'd say, and a really interesting background. We were just talking about your background at Oregon State for 7 years, really on the West Coast and learning West Coast roster building and recruiting, and now at Florida State. What's an experience along the way of your journey that shaped how you evaluate players and really build a roster today?
Yeah, fortunate enough to be around a bunch of great people throughout my time, leading in from Fresno, obviously, to Oregon State. I think anytime you're looking at projections and you're looking at players, what it taught you to do at Oregon State is really, let's be honest, you even through your time at Arizona State, Oregon State was never the first at the bowl. Mm-hmm. And so you're having to do a lot more with less. And to be at a school like Florida State, to where initially that logo gets you in the door, it gives you a bigger and a smaller margin of error at the same time. And so, you're still looking for the same characteristics. At the end of the day, the game hasn't changed regardless of what school you're at. You're still looking for the best football player because talent is only going to get you so far. At the end of the day, how are they wired? How are they going to attack the game? Do they love it?
Yeah. What's the biggest difference you've seen between West Coast football players and now being in the South, even the East Coast, the Northeast? What's the biggest difference between the two demographics when it comes to football?
Yeah, I remember this day till the day I die. Our first unofficial visit weekend we had here is our legacy weekend in 2022. And I remember how hard it was to find extreme length on the West Coast and just big people. And it felt like, all was hunting for offensive linemen and defensive linemen where they were. And I think we had 14 individuals who had a wingspan over 80 inches on that weekend. And so just the size of the individual. But I think overall, the overall mindset collectively of just how it is an attitude, it is a lifestyle here in the South for football, as you know. It's not necessarily just something that they do hobby-wise.
Yeah. It's funny. When I was at Arizona State, you can never find linemen on the West Coast, and you always had to go to the Midwest and recruit nationally. You could get speed in California, you get talent, and you get quarterback play in California and Arizona. But just thinking about the challenges in a place like Corvallis, to getting guys there. But you guys always had physical, competitive, tough rosters, I felt like. And how would you evaluate the toughness of a player? And even how do you do it now? What are the things that you look for when you're trying to figure out, does this guy love football? Is he going to play better than maybe his measurables? Is he going to play faster than he runs an actual 40? And because at Oregon State, you were dealing with a lot of that, having to find guys that were going to perform or overachieve than their measurables or data might tell you.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, you start with the reasons why, right? Yeah. Why might they play the game too? And I think when you're looking back at the toughness, like the difference between being hurt and injured, right? You played for a long time, it's the old saying, hey, the best you're ever going to feel is going to be practice number 1 at fall camp.
Mm-hmm.
as you look towards that. And so, can they play through things, and can they play through adverse conditions when it's not always bright and shiny outside? Are they able to respond? Are they able to, hold? And when the cards necessarily are stacked against them, how are they going to be? And then at the same time, what are they willing to overcome? I like multi-sport athletes.
Agreed.
Right. And just, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And regardless of what the scientific studies prove and those things, right? In high school, like if you're an offensive lineman, are you a wrestler? Are you a defensive lineman? Are you a wrestler? Are you down in the trenches? Are you going to find a way to win with leverage?
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a lot to be said for the being multi-sport and not being overly specialized too early.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I want to give you a general question here, because a lot of the viewers of this show are diehard football fans, maybe student athletes who want to play in college football, young coaches who want to be in shoes like yours someday. So my question is, for people who don't fully understand it or haven't witnessed it, what does a general manager actually do day to day in today's college football?
Yeah, to me, it's broken down into 5 categories. And they're kind of the pillars of an overall operation. When you look at that, you're looking at your internal and external evaluations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start and stop there. You look at your customer service arm, right? Which is really, how can you make the all-inclusive vacation, the visit experience feel good? So every single day that garnet carpet, in our case, is rolled out for them, right? You look at the marketing on to what is getting told, how you're controlling the narrative, what is there from a capability. And then also the 5th and probably the best part of the job is being a firefighter, right? And it's not only putting out fires, sometimes it might mean starting fires too, right? So it doesn't get into a rapidly uncontrollable burn, right, of being able to solve problems. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that things are kept off the head coach's desk, and that at the end of it, every single person in this program can do their job better because they don't have problems to worry about. And so something that always stuck with me riding around with Jonathan Smith, when we'd be on the road recruiting, he would point at a random person's house and say, hey, that person has the most important problems that they have to deal with. And so at the end of it, I come from a service side of everyone's problems that they deal with on the day-to-day basis, whether it be from our players, whether it be from our staff, there are their most important problems. And so if I can do something to help them solve those problems on the front end, how much better are they going to operate on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, that's going to make all of our lives collectively a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And one of the cool things you said there that I think a lot of football fans from the outside don't fully understand is it's not just external evaluation. It's also internal evaluation and evaluating your own roster constantly. I always tell one of my good buddies, Andrew Ford, is a pro scout for the Arizona Cardinals. And a lot of what he does is not scouting college guys, not scouting other teams. He's scouting his own roster. Who are the players they want to keep in the next portal, in the next free agent cycle? In college, it's the portal cycle. What's the process like for you guys when it comes to internal evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at internal, obviously, like very simplified in the sense of, obviously, it starts and stops with retention, right? Acquisition and is obviously the quickest path of, okay, hey, we want to acquire the best. But if you go and sign the best out of high school and you only hold on to them for 6 months, that's not a great use of investment and or time. And so the middle road of that, of not only retention, but is also development. And so, when you're looking, okay, you're constantly, the game has changed so much since probably even 5 years ago, to where you had a 3-year model and you're sitting there and, okay, hey, we're trying to build this out. There's our 3-year projection. Now, so much of this is, how can we put together the very best roster for this current year? And at the end of it, out of all the 3 paths that you can do that from, whether it's high school, whether it's junior college, or whether it is the transfer portal, how can they help you be the most complete football team and the best football team for the current year that you're in or going into?
Yeah. How do you balance high school recruiting versus the portal additions when constructing your roster? You just said you're trying to get the best roster for this season to compete right now. A lot of that would would venture to say then you're probably best leaning more into transfer portal additions than you are building a high school roster. But you don't want to look up in 3 years and be like, man, we have no seniors on our team, right? Or no one that's been in our program for more than one season. How do you balance that, deciding how many high school kids to take versus portal additions?
Yeah, but I think as your development goes, you're looking at what can help you now, but two, the best path to build the most complete football team is through high school recruiting.
Yeah.
Right. It is still, because chances are you're going to have them for multiple years.
Yeah.
And so if you can control that predictability a little bit longer rather than it being the constant turnover, because for every portal kid you do take, right, now you're going to have to replace them, chances are, next year.
Yeah.
And so you fall into the cyclical cycle of just, okay, now it's a constant replace, to where if you do identify and you develop correctly and you have that high school individual from multiple years on the team, that's going to pay benefits and dividends throughout the long term. How I look at it, high school recruiting, right? High school recruiting, obviously, that is the priority. You go in and you dominate that. That is to build the foundation and the depth of your football team. And hopefully it's filled with difference makers.
Yeah.
And then the transfer portal is there to plug the holes that need to be addressed, whether it's for depth, whether it's for injuries, whether it's for unforeseen circumstances, to go. And at the same time, through the transfer portal, if you can add additional complementary impact pieces, you need to do so, obviously. And so any avenue that there is, it's not a perfect science. I've never gotten into it with, hey, we always need to be at 10 transfer portal guys and 15 high school guys. No. What helps us make best for this year?
Yeah, makes sense. What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far from Mike Norvell?
I think how he approaches every single day in consistency. And right, I mean, he is the same individual, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm convinced he runs just on caffeine and caffeine alone through the espresso machine that he has in his office. But, his general approach, the optimism that he shares, we're a you can staff. Right. It's not a you can, and it's trying to instill and constantly instilling the belief in every single one of our players that anything within their dreams, goals, and aspirations, they're reachable. And how can we instill that belief to make sure that they're accomplishing all their dreams and desires at Florida State?
One of the interesting things when you are building a roster in this era of college football is the balance of actually building a culture in your program while you're also you don't always have high school kids. You have guys from other programs who might have been taught other things, who might have been taught other habits when it comes to practicing or weightlifting, or they've seen it done a different way. You also have guys who might have come from a program that did win a lot of games and did it different than how you're doing it at Florida State. And then you got to reteach those kids. How do you and Coach Norvell balance having to build that culture when you bring those guys in? I'm sure some of it is in the evaluation part of it, but how do you actually build the culture you want to build when you have so many new teams? It's a new roster every year.
Yeah, and that two parts to that answer. One, culture is that foundation is set through the work.
Yeah.
And so the work and the effort of what we're going to do in the off-season training program, we're different than most teams. We start our tour duty, which the traditional mat drills and those things, we start those in January. And so January, Friday, our coaches are coming off the road by Friday afternoon. We're starting with our team, everything being competition-based. And so at the end of it, everything in our program, there's a winner and a loser, right, in every single day that you do. And that was probably a big change that we did make last year. As you look to the other pieces of culture, I still think it's reinforced by so many others within the program. And so I think it's more than just the head coach obviously sets the foundation, and Coach Norvell does a phenomenal job of doing that. But as you look across, who else is echoing that message? That needs to be all the way down to the dietitian, to the strength staff, to the athletic trainers, to the film, because the interactions that these young men have are all over the place. I mean, there's 150 employees that have a touch point at different points with these guys around. I mean, it's such a big operation. So that language being a force multiplier, I believe, is heavily important. But you still lean in on your program guys have been in here, but also who you're adding to and why they're joining. Because the hard thing about the portal is, and what I always tell people, it's very rare that you're going to get a positive statement from someone who's leaving somewhere. But the old, I mean, you ask maybe an ex-girlfriend that you or I have, like, what are they going to say anything
Great
positive?
things.
Most of the time, probably not great things. But, I still go back to the reasons of why, right? There's a change on one side. Is it manageable? Can you understand the issues of what that's coming in? And at the end of it, can you work within those confines?
Let's talk about some fun stuff now. What's your favorite recruiting win you've had in your career?
Ooh, favorite
You've
one.
had a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two that stick out, like Luke Musgrave when I was at Oregon State. Being able to, all the ties that he had to the University of Oregon, and Brian Wozniak did a phenomenal job. Jake Kukas at that time of doing that. Tali Fuaga, just working through different academic things that we had to make sure, that he can get there. He had some great people surrounding him, that he eventually got in place, and the rest is history. And, he became a first round pick. I don't necessarily look back at the wins as a positive. I look back at the negatives of like, why did I miss somewhere and how can I be better from those? Or why could I not convince necessarily something? Why could I not convince myself or convince others of why to take?
Interesting.
But I think there's so many more pieces in it than it just being, hey, player X worked out. There's credit that needs to be devised by his upbringing and that person's surrounding cast and that supporting cast. The strength staff of what they're pouring in, the athletic training, the coaching staff, the analyst, the GA who's spending time every single point from those first 6 months on campus to, the player development staff to make sure that transition's going seamlessly. There's more to it than just saying, hey, player has talent and player has the right wiring. But there, wins and losses are why you do that. And so I obviously love the impact that you get to make on a young man's life, and the relationship matters the most to it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of coaches have fun when I ask them this question. Is there any recruiting loss that you still think about today that went somewhere else you thought you were going to get, and you're like, man, I don't know how we missed that kid?
Yeah, so there's a string of 3. And then they're all quarterbacks. So Josh Allen from Fireball, I loved him out of high school. Loved him even when he went to junior college. We had him at camp a bunch of times at Fresno, and I was a first year full-time person, right? During that time, I ended up transitioning to Oregon State. There was 2 individuals I wanted to bring at that time. One was Treston DeCoud, who was out of Northwest Mississippi, and then Josh Allen. Josh ended up going to Wyoming. We were one of the first schools to offer Justin Herbert, and then Oregon offered the next day, and that about wrapped it up. But probably the one that I wish we would have pushed Herbert for was Jordan Love. Being down in Bakersfield, and he was such a late bloomer developer and those things. Obviously went to Utah State, and the rest is history of what he's doing. But again, the old saying, hindsight's 20/22, right?
No doubt. When you were first year at Fresno State, first year full time, how hard did you stand on the table for Josh Allen? Because if people don't understand, your first year, I remember my first year at ASU, there were some guys I really wanted to take at tight end. Colston Loveland was one of them, but he's from Idaho.
That one,
and I remember Herm Edwards being like, "You sure this kid can play from Idaho?" It's my first year as a tight ends coach. I'm like, I'm really not that sure.
Yeah, dude, you were not that fun to recruit against. Arizona State was always the one that was the thorn in the side for us, because I felt like we had the same mindset as far as going after the type of tight end. And but I think it was different for me at Fresno, because I became from a GA holdover to being rehired to moving off the field. We had Josh at camp, and so much, and in the worst way, he wanted to be at Fresno. I know it obviously worked out for him. But following up, at that time, Darrick Carr was our quarterback, and he ended up going to the junior college. And by the time the junior college thing happened, he ended up at Wyoming, because one of our other staff members ended up at Wyoming. And so through those conversations, but I think you look back and, for Josh's case, he was a lot he was smaller than he is now. And so having the growth that he did, and, again, the rest is history for him. I think you look back and just sticking to your guns and trusting your eyes. That's the one piece of advice I give to any young person. And, through our student staff that we have here, I try to encourage them to challenge with your conviction, challenge with what your eyes see, and don't ride a fence. Just choose a side. Everyone's going to be wrong in evaluation.
Yeah.
But if you believe in what you see, then say that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Have an opinion is what we used to always tell our recruiting analysts and everything. Like we want to know what your opinion is. I might not agree with it, but at least have an opinion. Don't just ride the middle of it the whole time where you're never wrong but never actually right. I'm sure in your GM role with NIL nowadays, there just must be some crazy conversations that go on. I mean, I was talking to a coach, I won't say who, but was just saying, he's like, I got my 4-string running backs, grandma calling, asking for more money. It's just a crazy agents and everything. How are you balancing those NIL decisions? I guess really I should say revenue sharing when it comes to internal with Florida State football. How do you guys handle how much money is allocated to each player, each position, all that kind of stuff that goes into managing a roster nowadays? Guys, I've tried it all. Sports betting, daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks is by far the best way to get action on sports and the best way to make watching sports fun. I cannot watch a game without having a play on Prize Picks. On Prize Picks, you're picking players instead of teams. So each player has a set stat projection. Say it's Patrick Mahomes, 250 yards passing. I just pick more or less for that stat and then pair it with a couple other players, and then boom, you can win up to like 10x your money. The best part for all of my podcast viewers and listeners, Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you play just $5 if you use code NEXTUP or the link in the description. That's code NEXTUP, link in description, and you get $50 in lineups when you play just $5. Go lock it in right now. And guys, showing Prize Picks support helps me in this podcast a ton. So sign up with code NEXTUP. Help me out a little bit. And I'm telling you, you won't regret it. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports. It's a lot of fun. How much money is allocated to each player, each position, all that kind of stuff that goes into managing a roster nowadays?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think there's not a perfect science to it right now. I mean, I think the lazy comparison is to say, oh, it's just like the NFL. And it's the furthest thing from it, as you know, right? Our highest costs are in acquisition to where their highest costs are in retention and free agency. And so, the balance of recruiting a class, the balance of making sure that your locker room is happy and they're going to be welcomed in with open arms and treated the same way to make sure that it's all fallen in that standpoint. But yes, I mean, we do have guidelines per position of where ideally we want to stay. But at the same time, when you know that player's a player, you better do whatever in your power to make sure you can go get them. And at the same, it boils down to this for us. Money can't be the reason that someone chooses Florida State.
Yeah.
Money cannot be the reason that someone doesn't choose us either.
That's good. That's good. How, when it comes to retention in your roster and having to keep players, it's an interesting dynamic because you really have guys, you mentioned the NFL and how it's so different. I mean, in college now, a player is worth so much more money technically when they hit the portal than if they stay on your current roster. I remember talking to Kenny Pickett when he was at Pitt, and Kenny was a good buddy. He just was like, man, if I would have hit the portal when I was at Pitt, I would have probably made $500,000 my last year, maybe $1 million. Instead, he stays at Pitt, never hits the portal, makes $100,000. But had a great season, becomes a first-round draft pick. It all worked out, and that's part of the factoring too, right? Where do you get best developed? It was who knows if Kenny's a first-round pick if he transfers somewhere else. But that's the dynamic that's really challenging in college football right now is that players are incentivized to hit the portal just to have leverage and see what's out there because there are no real contracts. There's no timelines on those. They can leave whenever they want. How do you guys make decisions when it comes to retention of who's worth paying to keep here? Who's a guy that, okay, you want to hit the portal, see what you can get, maybe. Or do you guys have a philosophy around once someone's in the portal, they're never coming back? How do you manage all that? Because it is a lot in college football nowadays.
Yeah. One of our beliefs that we were probably the early believers in multi-year contracts, right? And so just not only some level of predictability, but also painting the picture of the belief that we have from an institutional side of, hey, this is where we expect you to grow. This is where you're starting. This is where you're going to end up. And as you continue down that path, there is room for growth here, not only from the professional development side, but also from the financial side as well. But I think as roles increase and then you come back and I think you lean back on the culture topic that we spoke on, right? I think there's something to be said for, it's one thing to talk about whatever else may be out there. It's a whole nother thing to pull the trigger and leave in a comfortable situation, going back to known heavens versus unknown hills. Which we've all been a part of. And so, when you look back at truly retention, right, you you never want to lose someone in your 2D if you can. In the age of college football, that's very, very likely to happen now, right? Because someone's 2 or 3 or 4, maybe someone's 1 somewhere else. And so eventually you're going to be met with those hard decisions and be making tough calls. And, through the team we have in place at Florida State and the leadership that we have, there's multiple people who have opinions on those things. And we're going to make those decisions collectively for what's best for our university.
Yeah. Of all the possible rule changes in college football right now, what's the one thing you would love to see cleaned up or fixed or changed immediately from someone who lives it every single day?
Yeah, I know the recent one that they just passed of not having any written documentation of offer or aid until November 15th. That's one of them. I like the one transfer portal window now. I think everyone likes the one portal window in theory. It's just the timing of when it happens, right? No one's set on. The eligibility rules need to be cleaned up. Like that's whether it's 5 for 5 or just making it clear. Right, we need to get out of the space of where everything is just here. Let's file an injunction here and get this done to get this along down the road. But I mean, I think we met as a whole GM group in Nashville in August, and I can't remember if it was Andy Frank or Andy Vaughn or someone else in the room. And the best point that they had, and they're right, is guys, we just need to start from scratch and burn the whole calendar and start there, and just go instead of trying to fix and. Hey, let's just fix this and try to put another finger in the dike in the dam here. Let's just burn it all down and start from scratch and build it all together.
Yeah, because the rules were made for a system completely different than this, right? You almost have to restart it. It's a completely different game. You can. I've followed your career from afar now, and I know you're analytical and ahead of the curve on a lot of things. As you look to make more informed decisions with tight timelines in college football now, how is technology that we use, like teamwork scouting, like some of the data tools that you guys have at Florida State to help evaluate players more efficiently? How has it made that process better for you by leaning into that data, analytics, things like that?
Yeah, I think it helps you, right? It's the initial filter of what you're trying to catch in teamwork scouting and the other data points that we use. We live in an era now, I mean, even 10 years ago to where Huddle maybe had just started and you were starting those playlists. I started in this when DVDs were there and that's all you had. And you pulled it to watch a kid's film. You were pulling out, the Max Preps roster and trying to make sure the time codes matched. The thing I think everyone has to be careful of now is because there's so much information available, you got to be careful not to overload yourself. And so still coming back to trust in your eyes, but at least now you have some objective filters there to kind of point you in the right direction of what you're trying to go get, what you're trying to replace, those comparables. Okay, this does match, right? This is player impact. This is overall top speed. This is the telemetry metrics of what we're seeing, what the top speed and what their average speeds are that are reached. But I think it's easy to fall in love with just measurability, which I think you have to be careful of, because at the end of it, what we can't still measure is the individual's heart. Does he love football?
Yeah.
If there's an analytics program out there that does do that, like that will be the $1 billion industry. But at the same time, they're still searching for that at the NFL. So, but the teamwork tools that we have are invaluable. They do save a bunch of time, and thankful to have them and be a pretty early adopter with them as well.
Yeah. We need Teamworks to come up with a competitive edge evaluation metric. It'd be tough to measure. Someone's got to figure it out.
And I mean, we use predictive indexing and those things too here as kids come on official visits and, filling those out and just to create I think more and more you're trying to either confirm or disprove what that story and what the surrounding pieces say around them. So I think I like to dive into the character of the individual so much, and not from the sense of, he has something wrong, we can't take him. No, it's what makes this person tick.
Yeah.
And then can we use that as, the motivation or the motivational side? And at the end of it, are they driven intrinsically as a form of motivation rather than externally?
You mentioned DVDs. I remember when I was in high school, I'm really dating myself now. I'm 30 years old. This was 2012, 2013 was my last year of high school. That was my class. I remember my high school coach putting my film on individual DVDs, writing a letter to every Power 4, Power 5 at the time, head coach in the country, and mailing it with like my mailing address, right? And that was like how we got in touch with coaches, like actually mailed a package of film to all of the programs in the country, and they all got it. And I got offers from that mailing. It's just crazy how much things have changed. You remember those days, getting all the DVDs in the mail and stuff?
I remember the DVDs. I remember 2011 Huddle. We had just signed on with Huddle at Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of messing around, making playlists. I'm like, this is going to absolutely change the game, right? I'm staring at the wall of DVDs that we had in our main staff room. I'm like, wait a second, I don't have to log 300 of these every single Monday morning. This is going to be so different. But now having the availability, I also think like people who used to hit the road hard, it was easier a little bit to hide kids too. Because you had to search and you had to be good. It came back to relationships on the road. Now you can just, you can do this from an office in the standpoint.
Yeah.
Still comes back to relationships of knowing that high school coach. But there's not a bunch of DVD. Now when a kid sends in a thumbstick or a DVD or, a handwritten letter even, it's very rare.
Who's a player on your team at Florida State that's been a really cool evaluation success story for you guys that maybe you saw a talent in when others didn't, something like that?
Yeah, I think the two twins that we have that are true freshmen, Mandrell and Darryl Desir, from down in Miami, New Orleans. They've come in, they've played as true freshmen. They worked their tail off to gain weight. And I believe they're just scratching the surface for what they are as they learn how to play with power. I'm excited about the young group that we have as part of this football team. And obviously some of the transfer portal guys that we did take, like those, Deuce Robinson, that was pretty easy to see of what that was. But even his story, dad playing here and being the originator of the 4th and 14 against the school in Gainesville, I think it's special. But what I'm impressed about Deuce is how he's wired. I mean, he's the first player in my career that we've had to tell, like, take it easy on the community service. Like, you're doing too much. And so Mekhi Danzy's another one who sticks out, right? I mean, he would have won the national championship in the 400 meter last year, hurt his hamstring right before the national track meet. But when he gets the ball in his hands, I don't think there's anyone that can catch him in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's the 9th fastest man in the world and the fastest 400 meter runner in the United States right now. So he set, so true freshman, he set the 400 meter record in the ACC in Florida State.
Wow. Yeah, I remember Deuce coming out when I was at ASU, and we had him on a couple visits, and the question was always, was he going to play baseball? Because he was such a good all around athlete, but you could see that competitive edge. He'll play a long time in the National Football League. That guy's special. What's a hill that you're willing to die on as a talent evaluator that you're just like, man, this is a non-negotiable for you for your program?
I mean, I think being able to find out, do they love football?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's, different ways you can ask those questions, right? Like, why do you play football? At the end of it, do you play football because what you think football can do for you? Or do you play it because you actually love it? Do you love the process? Right. And everyone, because at the end of it, I mean, you played for a long time, Adam, it's easy to get up when there's a crowd around you. It's easy to get up when you're walking into a visiting stadium. It's easy to put on the game uniform and do those things, or walk around campus with the shorts and the jersey number on of what those are. It's not easy to go in here at 6 a.m. and get your rehab in, or, to be up early to do chore duty. So do you love the process of the constant state of improvement of always getting better? And do you love the game? Are you a student of it? Are you constantly looking for improvement?
Yeah. I told you a lot of the viewers of the show are young coaches or scouting department guys or people who want to be in your shoes someday. What's a piece of advice you have for someone who wants to work in sports, wants to be a general manager of a football program someday? What would you say?
First piece would be relentless. You're right. You never know when the opportunity is going to show up, but all you're looking for is that first break. Right. And timing of play, so much of it comes down to who you're going to be surrounded by with, try to be a sponge and take as much in. I was fortunate enough early in my career to be around a bunch of people who took care of me. And no, it wasn't financially in the very beginning. It was, the opportunity to sit in on coaching interviews when I was 19 years old and just learn from that process. The second part is be your own biggest critic, but stay grounded in what your beliefs are, because there's going to be plenty of people on the outside telling you how you can do it differently, how you can do it better. And at the same time, I go back to Ryan Leaf and I became good friends. And there's a quote that's always stuck with me from the first time we met. And it's none of your business what people think about you.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be, folks out there who are telling you you're doing great or you're doing poor. Neither of them matter.
It's great advice from Ryan Leaf, and he's lived it, right? I mean, guys live the ups and downs. When you think about Florida State this season, you guys opened the year with that massive win against Alabama, one of the biggest wins of the year in college football, and you've had the ups and downs since then, and I'm sure it hasn't gone exactly the way you guys have wanted it to. What have you learned about this team and this roster through some of the adversity of the last few weeks since that, the really amazing start that began the season?
Yeah, I mean, resiliency, right? This team has not quit. They're still coming every single day to work, and hard hat and lunch pail, and not to be cliche, you would start to, if there was quit, you would start to see those things. And so obviously coming off a bye this week, we're excited for the opportunity we have ahead against Wake in the Doak on the night game. And, we'll see where the cards lay at the end of the year. But, I do believe that this team has not played its best football. I believe that that's going to show here very shortly. And the thing that excites me is we have not played complimentary football yet. But when we do, which the closest thing we have was game one, I believe this team is as talented that we've had.
Yeah. What's last couple of things for you? What do you think college football looks like, say, 3 years from now? It's changed so much in the past 3 years. There's obviously talks of federal legislation, of standardizing NIL, all this kind of stuff. What do you think it actually looks like, 36 months from, what is it, October 27th, 2025?
Yeah, I think there's two different paths that this possibly goes on. I think one, the easy answer, as far as the cleanest from a law and regulation standpoint, is a CBA. Obviously, for various of reasons, there's a lot of hurdles to get through of why that might not be possible, and why, why there's a lot of areas of obstruction. The second piece to me, I think this all hinges on basketball. If basketball in the tournament walks away to where they're going to treat themselves like the CFP, to where they're in charge of their own industry, I think then if the financial, artery that's going back to the NCAA, if that's another one that's cut, because I think a lot of people don't realize, right, the CFP doesn't give much money back, and if at all, to the NCAA. But if basketball is the next one that does go, I think then you're going to have a problem on your hands. And, there's a balancing act, right, of obviously, I mean, you played college football. Football players deserve to be compensated for what is earned. There is no disagreement in that. But I also think if you ask any willing person in the football locker room, no one wants to take away opportunities from other sports that are here. But at the same time with that, what is a fair compensation model? And two, I mean, the universities have money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to afford these $55 million buyouts that are there. And so the allocation problem, what that is from 3 years from now, I don't think this is going away. I think roster numbers are just going to increase as far as what compensation looks like. And rightfully so, because when you look at revenue sharing of what that is created, it probably should be closer to half.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. How do you, with the single transfer portal window now being in effect, which I think is a great thing. I mean, it's got to be tough to even build your roster in the spring, not knowing who's going to – how do you go through spring football, not knowing who's going to be there, who's leaving, who you're bringing in? But with that single portal window, how does it impact your roster management strategy at Florida State? Do you alter how you approach player evaluation, how you approach do you alter when you're bringing transfers in and things like that?
I think you're always adapting, right, to what the market is. And I mean, the old adage of adapt or die, which is obviously you have to, right? You're trying to stay on the cutting edge, and you have to make sure you're taking advantage of all of the different rules and regulations. And okay, hey, the calendar changes. Okay, the rules are the same for everyone. What's the best decision that can put us in the best foot forward to make sure that we're constantly doing what we need to at Florida State to field the best roster and make sure we're chasing championships. But I think as you look into this one portal window, obviously now there's no spring, right? So you have to get it right in January, because you're not being able to dip back into free agency for the second time. So just making sure that all your needs are met met. And I think that's a further emphasis of why high school recruiting is important. Because again, if you're just filling those depth pieces and filling those impact pieces of what you can do in the portal, as traditionally as you build it through high school, that's the longer game. That's the most time investment, right?
Yeah.
Coaches like the transfer portal because the transfer portal is quick and it's easy and it's extremely transactional.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right, if you get it wrong, you're going to be on the wrong side of things, which we've learned firsthand.
Well, Darrick, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you're in the middle of game week right now. I'm excited. I was happy to talk to you. You've done a great job at Florida State, at Oregon State, at Fresno, and have no doubt you'll be one of the great general managers in our sport for a long, long time. I was making a joke earlier that the general manager is like the celebrity on the football team now. I mean, everyone wants to talk to the general managers. So things have changed a lot probably from when you were in scouting a couple years ago, right? It's a lot different.
My whole goal was to be like the long snapper. If people knew my name, then that means I really messed up. But yeah, it has changed, for the good and the bad. And there's a lot of great people in this industry that deserve all the spotlight, for sure. And I'm happy for our industry as a whole because, the behind the scenes work that's starting to go noticed. But at the same time, I think this position's a lot like a quarterback. There's too much blame, when things go wrong, and there's too much credit when things go right. Because it's still collectively, there's so many people involved.
Well, appreciate it, man. Good luck with everything. Good luck this weekend. I think you guys have Wake Forest, but excited to see you keep doing a great job and excited to see where your career takes you.
Adam, I appreciate the time, and it was a pleasure to do this.
Next up.